Dear friends, representatives of the World Jewish Congress affiliated Jewish communities from all over the world, members of the World Jewish Congress Executive Committee, the World Jewish Congress Diplomatic Corps, and NextGen. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this World Jewish Congress call on survivors' testimonies from Hamas's massacres in Israel. My name is Alana Baranov, and I am a proud steering committee member of the World Jewish Congress's Jewish Diplomatic Corps and co-chair of the Women's Representation Task Team. I am based in Durban, South Africa. There are no words to adequately describe the horror of the unprecedented and savage assault against the civilians of Israel by Hamas terrorists that began on October 7th. There are no words for these atrocities, which saw the torture and murder of the largest number of Jews, simply for being Jewish, since the Holocaust. And yet words are important, and that's why today's call is so significant. For Jewish leaders from around the world to gather together and to hear first-hand testimony from survivors of these heinous massacres, so that the message of truth and justice can prevail. These crimes against humanity must be documented and shared. These stories cannot go untold, and it's our job to ensure this. At the start of the call, I would like to not only thank our very brave speakers for being here with us today, but to acknowledge how difficult it must be for them to share these personal experiences when the pain and the danger is still so raw and real. Thank you for your immense courage and for giving a voice to all of those affected by the massacres. I would now like to begin by briefly introducing our speakers. We're very privileged today to have Adele Raemer with us. She is from Kibbutz Nirim, where 4 civilians were murdered. 6 are still missing. We are also joined by Hila Fenlon, who is from the Moshav Netiv HaAsara, the closest Israeli community to the Gaza border, where 20 Israeli civilians were murdered by Hamas. And finally, we are privileged to have award-winning Israeli documentary filmmaker Oren Rosenfeld here with us today. Oren visited the communities bordering Gaza whilst terrorists were still in the area. And he is in the field at the moment, so we are very grateful that he was able to make the call today. I would like to start, please, Adele, by asking you if you could share your story with us.
Thank you for doing this Zoom, and thank you to everybody for coming and caring and listening. Our nightmare began Saturday morning, October 7th at 6:30 in the morning when we started getting alerts for rocket fire. From the second you hear that alert until the second you hear an explosion, we have between 0 to 10 seconds to get to the safe room. So I ran to my safe room where my son was, my 33-year son was visiting. And we closed the door, and the barrage was so intense that we didn't even have time to close the iron sleeve on the window. So we just sat underneath the window until it let up, hoping that no shrapnel penetrated the window. At about 10 to 7, we got a notification that there were terrorists in the community. So this really heavy barrage was there to sort of camouflage what was happening at the main event by the border, where in at least 40 places, I've heard between 40 to 80, I don't know the number, it was infiltrated by some 2,000 terrorists entering our sovereign border, infiltrating our sovereign border. We were told to go outside, to leave our safe room, lock all the doors and windows, shut the slats, and to go back in the safe room, lock it, and not go out for any reason. Now, the problem with that is that you cannot lock a safe room. These safe rooms are built to be rocket resistant. And the lock is something that clicks into place so that if a rocket hits the house, the kickback doesn't blow the door open and then you're not safe. But it can be opened by anybody on the other side. So what everybody realized they had to do, if they heard terrorists entering their house, they had to hold down on the handle. I've lived on my kibbutz, which is about a mile from the border, 2 kilometers from the border, since 1975. Never have I been in such fear for my life as I was on October 7th. We started hearing shouting in Arabic. We heard a machine gun fire all around us. They were right outside our houses. I could hear them through the walls. And we started getting frantic messages from other people in our closed kibbutz messaging group saying that the terrorists were outside, the terrorists were in their house, they were setting their houses on fire, and nobody is coming. We have a small group of men who are on the first responders. In the end, there were only 4 of them that were actually active. There was one who's my son-in-law, who was in his house with my 3 granddaughters alone, so he couldn't leave them. And the other members of the first responders were not in the kibbutz. So 4 men held our point for hours. They were so brave. And we keep waiting for the army to come and saying, why aren't they coming? Why aren't they coming? And calling anybody we can, anybody we could think of to come and save us, because there were people that were in their safe rooms and smoke was entering the safe room and they were choking. They couldn't breathe. My son-in-law was in the house with my 3 young granddaughters, age 2 to 8, and he heard a terrorist enter the house. He told the girls to hide under a blanket and to be quiet, and that he'd be back soon, it would be okay. He went outside and shot that terrorist with his own hands. He tried to go after another 2 terrorists who were in the house, but when he got to the threshold, he realized that there were multiple terrorists that were highly armed outside, and he wouldn't be able to stand up against all of them. We were in that room from 6:30 in the morning, and the army arrived on Nirim at about 1. But there were still terrorists all over the place. From what I understand, there were at least 50 terrorists rampaging through our community, setting cars on fire, smashing things, going into homes, stealing, throwing, messing up the homes, trashing the homes completely. And people are petrified in their safe rooms, holding onto that handle for dear life. Finally, at 5 o'clock, they came to my house. The army arrived at my house and extricated us. They went from house to house, clearing out the area, sterilizing the area, and extricating the people in the different houses, and walked us to a central area where they could protect us all. They walked us outside where there were still rockets coming in. There were still active terrorists, and I couldn't understand why they were walking us the long way round. What I realized afterwards is because the normal way we would have walked, there were bodies of terrorists that they didn't want us to be exposed to that scene. So my community spent a petrifying day and night. We were finally evacuated at about 2 in the afternoon on Sunday and brought here to Eilat, where we are right now. And I think that's enough for me, because there's more stories to hear.
Adele, that is just beyond imagination and incredibly terrifying. I got goosebumps listening to you recount it here.
In our wildest dreams, when we imagined infiltration, I asked the people of the first responders, did you ever practice for such a scenario? They said, no, we had no idea. We practiced for a single terrorist, a few terrorists, never that quantity of barbaric monsters. There's no other word for it.
I'm so sorry, but thank you so much for sharing your story. I would now like to ask Hila, please, if she could share her experiences from October 7.
Sure. First of all, hi to everyone. I would like, before everything, to apologize. I have been to 4 funerals today of our neighbors and friends and relatives, so I'm still a bit overwhelmed with everything. So I hope I'll be able to tell my story in a clear enough way for people to understand. Also, I apologize for my English; it's not as good as Adele's, but I'm doing my best. I'm a farmer and I live in Moshav Netiv HaAsara. Netiv HaAsara is the closest community to the Gaza Strip. And we always say that whatever happens in Gaza, we feel faster and stronger. And that also means that those terrorists who came into the communities, the first community they entered was our community. It started for us at 6:30 in the morning with the first rocket, first red alarm, telling us a rocket is coming. And I was, because I'm a farmer, even though it was a Saturday, I was just about to go and check my farm just to make sure everything is okay. And I was just about to step out of the house when the first red alert came, telling us a rocket is coming. And then that very, very first rocket blew up just outside my house and destroyed my car completely. So we ran quickly into the security room that each and every one of us has in the house. We were there, myself, my son, and his girlfriend, and the 2 kids of my partner. My partner was at work at that moment, and they were there with us. They are from the center of Israel. They're not familiar with everything that happens. And we just came inside thinking it just started another round like we experienced for the last 22 years. But all of a sudden, within a few seconds after it started, the electricity got shut down and we realized we have no cell phone. We can't call, we can't receive phones. We don't have WhatsApp or any kind of communication. And then we started to hear shooting. It was only later on that I learned that the terrorists who came to our community came in with from the sky with like a parachute or whatever. I don't know how to call it. They were just flying in. They had maps knowing where each and one of them were supposed to land. They knew our community very well because they were observing and watching us for the last years. And they came in, and our security guards were just, one of them were just so happened to be outside his house. He saw them coming. He was just preparing to go on a motorbike trip that morning. He saw them coming and he ran in instantly just to take his weapon and also let everyone else know. He called all the communities in the area and told them there are terrorists coming into the community and told them to be prepared. And I think by doing that, he saved many lives. They also called, the civilians in our community that are supposed to give the first answer until the army shows up. In that case, they've been training for it. We have about, I don't know how many people volunteering to do this job, but they were all outside. But the terrorists were all over the place and they committed horrifying crimes in people's homes. I want to tell you a little bit. I know it might be very graphic, and I only unfortunately, I saw it all yesterday. It's still in my mind. It's still hurting me to remember the sights that I saw, but it's important to know. We lost 20 people in our community. Some of them were people taking their guns and running outside to protect their families. And some of them were just everyday people, civilians in their homes, where terrorists came in and brutally murdered them. In one house, they went in to a family of 2 people. The kids were out that day, and they were there with the dogs. It's a family that loves dogs, and they rescue dogs all the time. And they have about all the time they have a few dogs with them, and those terrorists went inside and murdered the couple with the dogs inside the safety room. In another house, they just sent like an RPG or something like this into the house. It's like a wooden house, American style wooden house, and it's got burned completely with the people inside. In another house they went in, it was a family with 2 kids, and they started throwing grenades inside the house. The family escaped into the security room and tried to lock themselves and hold in the door handle. And for 6 hours, the father of that family was holding the door handle while the terrorist was throwing grenades at the door and kicking it, trying to break in. It was only later on that they managed to get out from the window hours after. I can't even imagine what those parents felt when they had to fight with terrorists for that long, knowing that they're just outside and they are so determined to just murder them. Another story that we have in the community is a father, a great friend of mine, one of the closest friends that I have. We were raised together in the community. I know him from the day we were born, and he had 4 kids. 2 of them were with him. One of them was in another house with their mother, and the 4th one, the oldest one, 17 years old son, was with his friends on the beach. They went surfing and fishing. The terrorists came and he saw them. He wanted to run and protect his kids, and the terrorists threw a grenade at him, hit him directly while he was trying to save his kids. He died there. The 2 kids were injured and they're still in hospital. One of them is in quite a bad condition. And all that happened when his older son, got murdered by terrorists in Zikim Beach, where they went surfing with their friends. I don't want to go after every person that died because there are so many of them. I just want to tell about one more story that also brings a little bit of light to the story, and that's the story of what happened to my sister. She was, that morning, she was home alone with, she have 2 kids, but that morning she was home alone with just a younger kid. She's 8 years old. And our neighbor was outside, knowing the terrorists are in the community. He was outside hiding to protect the houses in the area. And he saw the terrorist trying to enter my sister's house, and he shot him at the door, right at the door. He just died there. It was a brave thing that he did. He saved my sister's life and my nephew's life. What he didn't know, that in that exact time when he was saving my sister, his son was getting murdered in the beach along with my other friend's son while they were fishing and surfing. So it's some kind of a mix between the tragedy that we have and heroes that we have here. And the other point that it's so important for me to emphasize with light is what happened to Israel, to the society of helping each other. It's like the Israeli found themselves once again. It's united everyone in such a way that it's emotional sometimes to know how the entire country is holding us and hugging us and supporting us. And if we need to try and find one piece of light in this darkness, is that Israelis found themselves again. This is my story for now.
Thank you, Hila. As you said, the details of these stories are horrific, but we can't turn away. It's so important to know the details of what happened. I'm so grateful that your sister is okay. And as you mentioned at the end about the incredible stories of resilience and solidarity that have been shown in Israel in the last few days, I know that the hope of Israelis has really spread to Jewish communities around the world, and the strength of Israel has given the Jewish diaspora so much strength. Thank you so much for sharing. I'd now like to ask Oren to please share with us his story and his.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you, Adele and Hila, for telling your stories. So I heard about this attack. Information started coming in early in the morning, and usually, the first thing I do when I hear there's something really serious going on there is I contact Hila or Adele or Yaniv that live down there to see what's going on, and maybe to come and arrange to come and interview them for different foreign networks that I work with. So I've reached out to Hila, and there was no answer. And I reached out to another friend, a cameraman, Yaniv from Nachalos, and he didn't answer also, which was very unusual because he's a journalist and usually answers immediately, especially when, there's some kind of security event going on there in the South. And finally, I reached out to Adele, and she reached out back. She wrote back, "I'm okay. I'm hiding in the safe room. They're outside. I can't talk. I can only whisper." Do you remember, Adele?
I don't even remember that. I remember that I gave a few interviews whispering to people. I did not remember that we spoke.
Yeah, no, we spoke on WhatsApp. We wrote each other. Anyway, I was very happy that Adele answered, but I also realized what's going on and how serious it is. Terrorists in the kibbutz. She's hearing Arabic outside. There's shooting. I mean, it's the worst possible scenario you can imagine. And I'm thinking, okay, where's the army? What's going on? And it started sinking in that this is something very unusual and very, very bad. Thankfully, Adele was rescued. She even managed to do an interview inside the bunker, the safe room, hiding, so the whole world can know what's going on there. I believe it was on the BBC radio, if I'm not mistaken. You don't remember. And Hila finally, a day after, or wrote on Facebook that she's okay. There was no electricity, and she's alive, and which was a big relief, of course, to hear some sign of life. Unfortunately, my friend Yaniv Zal, his wife and kids were all slaughtered in their home in Nachalos, a kibbutz that we have still not been able to access. And to be honest, I don't know if I could handle going there. I've been to filming the day after in Kibbutz Kfar Aza, and a day or two later in Be'eri, and in the site of the Nova Music Festival. And yesterday, Hila kindly arranged, I don't know how she did it, for me and the film crew to follow her into a closed military zone, basically a forward position of the army at the moment, to her Moshav. She came back for the first time with us since it happened, and we went into her neighbor's houses, or what was left of them. The blood was still on the floor, the keys on the table, the wallets. They never got out of bed, some of them dead. I mean, it's hard to even start to imagine what happened there, but it's way worse than what you think. I don't think people fully understand the magnitude of this massacre. Just now, 5 minutes before this Zoom, I got a message that in a kibbutz that we were walking around with the body collectors, filming them house to house, Zaka in Kibbutz Be'eri. I was just informed that now, 12 days after, a mother and her baby were found shot and burned, hiding in an attic in the kibbutz. So bodies of people are still being found as we speak. I've never thought I'd have to cover a news event or story even close to this. I mean, as you can tell, I'm pretty traumatized from what I've seen, and I've seen pretty bad things in my life in the army and the Second Intifada. I've been to almost every suicide bombing. But what we've seen here in the past 12 days, and I'm still down here in Ashkelon in a hotel, and we go out every day to another place. What we've seen here is a Holocaust, basically. Hard to believe.
Thank you, Oren. It's impossible to believe and to picture, as you say. But thank you so much for sharing the story with us and for being there to document and to collate the truth so that the world can know what took place. We now have an opportunity for everyone who is part of the call to ask questions. Please feel free to send them through in the chat function, or ideally, if you can, please put on your camera and raise your virtual hand so that you can ask a question to one of the three speakers via video. We have a question that's come through on the chat, if I may, to Oren, and it is regarding the spreading already of fake news and narratives in the media and social media that are trying to cast doubt on the events that took place. And we wanted to ask you what can be done to counteract this as Jewish community leaders around the world.
Okay. So there's a famous sentence that the first casualty of war is the truth. And I think there's no exception here in this case. The Palestinian narrative and is still perceived, at least amongst many journalists and in the media, is the right one as far as they're concerned, and we are the bad ones, the occupiers, and there's nothing we could really do to change that. You can try and tell the truth, you can try and present facts. I was today at the IDF press conference in the Kiryat, in the Army headquarters, where Daniel Hagari, the IDF spokesperson, presented audio recordings of two Hamas terrorists saying that this is an Islamic jihad rocket that was, fell short and blew up that, parking lot of the hospital where all these people were killed. I mean, journalists hear this and it goes in from here and out from here. They do not care about facts. They do not care about anything to do with Israel, only about the poor Palestinians. And it's very hard to change that or affect that. My job, by working with the foreign media, is not to change how they think or talk or whatever they choose to say on TV. My job is to take them to see with their own eyes and cameras what I see with them. They can make up their own decision. They can make up their own reports. There's really nothing that we could do but stick to our truth and stick to ourselves as the Jewish people together, because we're up against the world. And today a friend in Germany called me saying, you don't believe what happened in Germany today? They threw Molotov cocktails, fire bombs at a synagogue in Berlin. And a synagogue in Berlin. So, you know, first thing that comes to mind is Nazis, is Holocaust, is you know, it's we're really, you know, I think at a time that is very crucial to the survival of Israel. And I really hope that, you know, people in the world understand how severe this situation is. It's not just another war in Gaza. It's not a few missiles from Hezbollah. It's all the Arab countries coming together against us, led by Iran, and executed by their proxies in the region, Hamas and Hezbollah. We will, of course, win, because as Biden just quoted Golda Meir, you know, and in his latest speech, it's because we don't have a choice and we have nowhere else to go. But we will win, but the price is already unbearable, unbearable. Everybody I know or speak to lost somebody, somebody is missing. You know, my daughter's in the army, her boyfriend was killed. But we will prevail.
Oren, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
What Israel has gone through in the last 2 weeks is unspeakable. And as you said, we know sadly that whenever there is conflict in Israel and Palestine, we see an increase in anti-Semitism around the world. And so many of our communities are having to deal with that at the moment, which is another challenge on top of mourning what has taken place in the Jewish state. And there's another question for Adele and Hila, if possible, asking what efforts are being done yet. We understand everything is so raw and recent still, but to document some of the stories of what took place and the evidence of these horrific crimes. Could you share anything on that with us, please?
Excuse me. Let Hila go first.
Of course, Hila, if you have anything to share about what's happening in the area you are in with your community.
I think it is important to try and bring the evidence, you know, and keep them, you know, because it will be very short before people will say it never happened, or will try to twist it like Israel did something to cause it or whatever. I'm trying to do whatever I can, like joining this meeting or being interviewed as much as I can, telling the story and sharing it with whoever is willing to listen. For me personally, it's a little bit too early to do anything more than that, because we are still grieving and we are still wondering what's going to be with us. I left my home with 2 t-shirts, one on and another one that I grabbed. It was only yesterday, thanks to Oren, that I was able to go back to my home to grab a few more things. I'm actually at the moment, like Adele, I'm you know, I forgot the name, sorry. Like
A refugee?
Refugee, thank you, Adele. I'm a refugee in my own country. I'm staying in Ramat Gan. It's in the center of Israel. I'm a southern girl. I never imagined I'll spend more than one night in the center of Israel, and I've been here for 11 days now. and counting. I really want to go back home and recover, and I think part of the recovery will be to share and document our stories. Maybe Oren can help with that. But for me, it's a little bit too early. You know, I said yesterday in the interview that 4 of my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and they came here to start a state. And today I'm a Holocaust survivor as well. And it's very sad, it's very unfortunate that even in the Jewish state, the state of Israel, we have to go through things like we had last Saturday. And I still feel that I need time to recover. Yesterday we started to bury our friends, and it will be a while as well. Yesterday we had 4 funerals, today we had 4, tomorrow we have 5. It's a little bit too early for me.
So I personally have, as I said, have been giving interviews since it started. I started doing Facebook Live from my safe room when we got the first rocket attacks. I whispered a few interviews while I was hiding in the safe room with terrorists right outside, and I haven't stopped. Even as I've been on this webinar, I keep getting calls and requests to interview. Aside from that, when I evacuated from my house, we were told we could, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, we were told that we could go back to our homes and pack a bag, and they would to wait in the safe room, and they would let us know when it was safe to go to the buses. So I packed a bag very poorly, but what I did grab was my laptop and my camera. And because I'm an obsessive compulsive picture taker, that's how I describe myself. And it is very important to me to document things. So since we've been here, we've put together a documentation team. And I've been bringing people to sit on my couch in my hotel room behind me. I've documented 12 people so far. I just turn on the camera and let them talk. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm grabbing them. I'm grabbing these witnesses' stories because they're so important for the world to hear. And as we said before we started this, I'll be sharing it with Gabriel and Oren, and hopefully they will find a way to spread the word, to amplify our voices.
Hi, I have a question. Hi, I'm Ruth from New York. I was wondering, I mean, I wasn't there that long ago, and there were so many riots, and left side, right side, and there was just a lot of discontent with each other. And I'm wondering, have you seen a difference with that? I mean, are they still, fighting amongst each other during this time period? Is there a lot of, I mean, I'm finding from my own family, I mean, we have Chilunim, and we have Haredis, we have a lot of mixed family in Israel, and I find that there's a lot of anger and blame towards each other and towards the government. I understand that people are taking a stand, saying that IDF is responsible for lack of security and so forth. But do you find that like this is happening now? Is there a way that we can somehow counteract, or not allow other nations to separate us? I mean, are they still fighting with each other? Is there still more riots going on?
So if I may, Hila mentioned it before, but I will reiterate. I don't like to say I told you so, but unfortunately, months ago already, I told people that I gave interviews to, or friends, unfortunately, the only thing that's going to bring us together is some catastrophe. I did not envision anything this horrendous, but it has done the job, at least for now, at an extraordinarily high price. I can tell you, I'm in Eilat. We are getting the most unbelievable hug from the hotel, from the people of Eilat, from the people of Israel. I have not heard anybody talk politics. So when the you-know-what hits the fan, the people here know how to pull it together, and we are pulling it together. Blaming the army, not blaming the army. This is something that the army is going to have to do very serious, intense research into to see how it was possible that this billion-dollar fence, an underground barrier that neutralized the threat of tunnels and was supposedly impermeable, was so easily permeable by so many people in so many spots. But for now, we're fighting a war, and learning learning about what happened and how it happened and why it happened, that will have to be put on hold until this happens. And our government has a lot of work to do, and the army has a lot of work to do, because if they want Hila to go back to her home, and if they want me to go back to my home, and all of the other people whose communities were slaughtered and kidnapped and lived through these atrocities, they're going to have to do something very, very serious to rebuild our sense of security and faith in the army protecting us and being safe in our homes. Because otherwise, you can forget about that area. And if you forget about that area, you can forget about Israel.
I see things a little bit differently, because I will speak politics at this time. I have nothing to say to the army. I think the people in charge are the politicians, the government. They are the ones that are giving priority to the army as well. And it's kind of obvious what priority they were given in the last few months since they've been in power. I also disagree with the saying that we've been fighting among ourselves. Israel is a democracy, and the people who were demonstrating on the streets, including myself, were demonstrating to make sure that Israel will stay a democracy. Power can corrupt, and we saw people that been in power for too long, and probably they got a little bit corrupted, and that's what made Israel weaken. That's what makes Israel weak. And I agree with Adele that it probably had to be some kind of a war to unite us again, which happened. But we can only be a democracy in Israel. There's no other way. And if tomorrow, when people will start to forget about this horrific thing that happened to us, and they will continue, I will continue to make sure that Israel will stay a democracy. I'll fight for my country in two ways. One, making sure it is a democracy. I will not live in a country that is not a democracy. I will not live in a country that is not liberal and is not letting people to be whatever they want or need to be. And the other thing I want to do is to go back to my home when the people in charge or responsible to what have happened are still in power. And those people today, in my eyes, is first and most importantly, a vicious terror organization called Hamas and its partners in Gaza. But in my eyes, it's also the current Israeli government today. And I'm a farmer. I'm determined to go back to my home. I'm determined to go back and rebuild my house, my community, my farm, like we did when we got evacuated in the peace agreement between Israel and Egypt in the early 80s, when we rebuild everything. I'm determined to rebuild it again and make sure that Netiv HaAsara will last forever, but not while the people who abandoned us and abandoned us on the border and ignored or I don't know how to call it. They just left us with no security because they had so many other ideas, and they felt a little bit too pride about their victory or about what Israel is or should be or can be. And I think that will not be able to take place again. The people in the that are still in power today will not be able to forget that Israel belongs to all its citizens and not only some of them.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Adele from Mexico. She's a fellow JD and member of the Women's Representation Task Team. She says, I'm very sorry for what you have experienced. Personally, I have not wanted to see videos broadcast about the massacre of October 7th. However, I have heard a lot about the brutal acts, particularly against women, children, and the elderly. Could you share with us more about what happened to these groups? A very difficult question, but I think an important one. Maybe Oren, if you have anything to say on that, or Adele, Hila.
Okay, I'll start. If no one else is volunteered, so I'll start. Okay, Oren, you'll take.
I'll be short and you can pick up, Hila. I just want to end the conversation earlier. So something very beautiful happened as a result of all this horrendous things that we've been discussing, is that all of those groups that were demonstrating and putting all this effort in all these demonstrations that were happening here in a year and a half, our overnight changed to helping the army, the people of the communities, other people. Israel now is united and strong. Unfortunately, like Adele said, any Israeli you'd ask would say, you know, if there's a war, we will all unite. This is something very internal that we're going through. But when we're in danger or a threat, we will all unite and all the differences will go away until the day after. And then we can go back and argue and that's what's happening at the moment. At the moment, we're at war. All the organizations that were managing the demos, and I've been following them very closely as a journalist, and WhatsApp groups have shifted to helping, to volunteering, to do all these beautiful things to help us survive this very challenging times. So that's, you know, about that, and about the horrors and all that, you know, it's very fresh in my mind, and everything you heard, times it by 1,000. Everything you heard. I was with Zaka, going from house to house. The things I saw there, I will never forget. And just want to say, everything you hear, even if it's unimaginable, times that by 10. That's what happened there. To the women, to the children, to the elderly. Unimaginable. ISIS, as a fellow journalist said here, and he's been to everywhere in the world, he said, this is way, way, way worse than what ISIS did in the videos that ISIS ever put out. So I don't know if, Hila, you want to add anything to this, but...
Okay, I don't have a lot to add to it. You know, since Protective Edge War in 2014, I've been doing a lot of talk and a lot of lectures about how easy to live on the border with the Gaza Strip. And I always used ISIS as an example. And I said to people, you know, that came from different parts of the world, either being Jewish or not Jewish, journalists, diplomats, students, and so on. I always said, imagine ISIS. Imagine ISIS living on your doorstep. And I said, this is what Hamas is to us. And back then I didn't think that Hamas can be as bad or even worse than ISIS, but it is. I didn't see personally what they did, because most of the people who were victims of whatever they did are not with us to tell the story. But we hear it from our friends and neighbors in our community and other communities. It is pure cruelty. Whatever they did, it's things that nobody can imagine. Nobody can even bring up to mind that somebody can do it. And the entire reason of all this is just to make us scared. So yes, we are a little bit scared. We are a little bit turned off, in a way that I feel I have no power at the moment. But that sadness and that pain will turn into something bigger. It will turn into something greater. It will turn into more. It will turn into more determination to win this, because we know now what losing means. We know what our enemy looks like, what they can do. I thought Hamas was a bad terror organization. I didn't realize how cruel they are. I didn't realize, when I think about all the families or the people that are now kidnapped in Gaza, I'm trying to switch off my thoughts, because it's something that I can't even bear to think about, to be among this cruelty. I always looked at the Palestinians as people, as neighbors that one day will need to come to solutions with. Today, their leaders, Hamas, prove that there is no way at the moment to ever fix whatever they did. It is beyond cruelty. It is beyond cruelty to murder babies, to chop their heads off. I'm sorry I'm being graphic. To burn people alive, to take out babies from their mother's belly before they are born. We heard about these stories, but they were from darkened eras of history. We thought it was part of our very, very dark past of humanity, and it is today. And it's so sad to know.
Yeah, I'd like to say October 7th, 2023, something in our DNA switched. It's changed. And the world needs to understand that when they chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, that is a genocidal chant. And we need to take them at their word. I also have friends in Gaza. I have friends who have escaped from Gaza. I have friends in Gaza. And I'm terribly concerned about their lives, because I know that these are peace-loving people. And these are people that just want the same thing that I do: safety for their children, food on their table, and to be able to educate their kids. But their leaders have to go. They have to be neutralized. And one of my friends who escaped from Gaza, and I hosted in my house about 2 years ago, I interacted her after this whole thing started, and she said, they're ruthless. You have to understand how ruthless they are. And when she was at my house, she said, you know what the problem with you Jews are? You're too empathetic. You're too easy on them. Tragically, she was right. She knew what she was talking about.
I have no words hearing what you have seen and experienced. But with that, we come to the end of this remarkable call. And again, I would just like to thank our three speakers so much for sharing such harrowing and very personal stories of survival. I know I speak for everyone on our call today when I say that we are in awe of your bravery, resilience, and we promise you that we will not remain silent in the face of such evil. Your stories matter, and we will amplify them. Amid the ongoing and horrific situation in Israel, the World Jewish Congress leadership and staff, our Jewish diplomats and the Next Gen members, as well as all the World Jewish Congress affiliated communities, remain dedicated to supporting Jewish communities around the globe in navigating this unprecedented crisis and to providing support to our brothers and sisters in Israel. We pray for strength and protection for the people of Israel and Jewish communities everywhere. Our thoughts are with all of those who have lost loved ones, who are injured and hurt, and with those who are being held hostage. May they be returned to their homes and families safely and speedily, and may peace and justice prevail. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you so much for joining us.
Am Yisrael Chai.
Am Yisrael Chai.
Am Yisrael Chai.
Chai.
Am Yisrael Chai.
Am Yisrael Chai.
Am Yisrael Chai.
Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael Chai.